Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive into a specific YouTube clip. It's got Kevin O'Leary and another commentator talking.
Yeah, and they're really getting into some, pretty big topics: government, policy, the economy.
Right. And even specific people like Elon Musk and how a previous administration handled things.
Exactly. So our job here really is to get inside that particular conversation. We're pulling out their main arguments, the key things they said.
Uh-huh. It's not about whether we agree or not. It's about understanding what they were saying in that moment and maybe why they framed it that way.
Just breaking down their viewpoints from this specific source.
Okay, so what you can expect is basically a tour of their perspectives,
Yeah.
how they see government efficiency, the role of ideology.
Yeah, and O'Leary's investor take on the economy, plus that really unique approach to trade deals they talked about.
It's all straight from that conversation.
Think of it as getting to the core ideas they wanted to share.
All right, let's jump in. First big area, Elon Musk and government audits. O'Leary kicks this off. He says, pretty bluntly, he thinks Musk did a great job.
Mm-hmm. And he supports that by saying, look, the idea of auditing the government, making it more efficient, that's just a good idea. Simple as that.
Right, the principle holds up. But then O'Leary brings in this personal lesson. Says Washington is a very nasty, nasty place.
Yeah, that's a strong statement.
So why bring that up regarding Musk?
Well, he connects it directly, says
Right.
anyone who gets that close to the sun is going to burn some feathers. Like Musk probably found out just how rough that world is.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Implying it's not like a normal business deal. It's
Yeah.
different, nasty.
Exactly. You get exposed, you face the heat. That seems to be his point.
He does add, as a Tesla shareholder, he'd rather Musk focus back on the company. Seems he thinks that's happening now.
Right. But it's interesting. He still says what Musk did wasn't bad at all, even though, that huge goal.
The near $1 trillion in savings.
Right. Yeah, even though that didn't happen, the attempt wasn't wrong in O'Leary's view.
And to hammer home that nasty Washington point, he mentions Elizabeth Warren, calls her a parting card. What do you think he meant by that?
It sounds like maybe a final challenge
Yeah.
or some kind of sharp political move that really illustrates the tough environment. It's a vivid phrase.
Yeah, it is. And his takeaway, you need thick skin. He thinks Musk probably learned that.
Seems that way. Okay, so moving from Musk's experience.
Let's talk about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Government spending, ideology. The other commentator brings up this CNN segment.
Right, where the idea was that government cuts weren't just about waste, but were like ideological cuts driven by cultural differences.
And the commentator in our clip actually agrees with the premise. Says, yeah, everything this president implied Trump does is ideological.
But then quickly adds, as is every president. That's key.
So the counter is, it's not just one side. Democrat spending is ideological too.
Exactly, that's the pushback, saying ideology isn't exclusive to one party's policies.
And they get pretty critical of the CNN person, saying she was carrying water for the Democrats, that phrase.
Yeah, carrying water basically means promoting a specific political line, maybe uncritically.
Uh-huh. And they say that approach hasn't really worked out well for her or CNN. They even contrast it with someone else.
Dick Tapper, yeah, saying he's doing fine by analyzing Democratic failures, suggesting maybe that's a more, effective media angle from their perspective.
Interesting contrast there about media coverage. Then they pick it back hard to spending cuts, echoing O'Leary, really.
Very much so, saying cuts are so incredibly necessary. Why? Because we're going to drown under the debt payments. Strong language.
Drown in debt, yeah. And it leads to this argument that we need to stop just heaping money on these vanity projects.
Suggesting a lot of spending isn't essential, maybe more about politics or appearances.
And here's where they get, pretty cynical about the politicians themselves, from both parties.
Right. The view is that lawmakers are basically addicted to power and votes.
And how do they feed that addiction, according to this view?
Through government spending, giving stuff to constituents to stay in power. That's the connection they make.
So the implication is, don't expect them to stop it.
Pretty much. They're not going to be the ones who stop the spending because their reelection depends on it, or so the argument goes.
They also slip in that comment about Democrats having short memories and going back to buying Teslas again. Seems linked to the Musk stuff earlier.
Yeah, it's a bit cryptic, but seems to suggest, political outrage fades and people go back to their usual consumer habits or whatever. A predictable cycle, maybe?
Possibly. And then there's that other phrase the commentator uses. Sounds really dismissive. Yada, yada, wolf, wolf, wolf.
Yeah, that definitely comes across as brushing off arguments like, I've heard this all before, it's just noise, or maybe like the boy who cried wolf story, signaling deep skepticism.
Okay, definite frustration there. Let's shift gears now to the economy and trade. O'Leary comes back in.
And he starts by restating his philosophy. No politics, just policy. Because that's where the money is, for him.
Right. And from that investor viewpoint, he seems, well, pretty upbeat about the economy at that moment.
Yeah, points to the market back near its highs, almost full employment, and he specifically highlights tech.
Killing it in tech was the phrase. So, bottom line for him as an investor.
He says he's very happy. Can't argue with that personal assessment.
Then he talks about the previous administration's style, implied Trump again, uses some interesting analogies.
The camera there for everything, and comparing the process to sausages being made.
Sausages being made, meaning messy, public, moving to
volatility, that's the word he uses. Makes sense from an investor's perspective. That kind of public, maybe chaotic process creates market swings.
He also describes the president pushing executive power up against the courts, and when the courts push back.
He doesn't care. That's O'Leary's read. Just keeps pushing.
And O'Leary thinks the market was expecting something specific because of this style.
Yeah, he predicted a reciprocal tariff maybe around 10% by the midterms. That was his interpretation of where things were heading.
Then he drops that statistic.
Yeah.
It's pretty eye-opening.
60 trade deals, negotiating 60 at once. He stresses no administration has ever tried that, never been done.
Wow, 60. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And despite court challenges and all the yada, yada.
Yeah, despite all that noise, countries like Japan, Canada, the EU, India, they were still talking. That's what O'Leary emphasizes.
Why? Why were they still at the table, in his view?
Because he sees the president, the implied Trump, as a bulldog, someone who is not going to stop.
Just keeps coming at them with tariffs.
That's the idea. This relentless pressure, O'Leary argues, is exactly why those negotiating teams stayed in Washington. They believed he wouldn't give up.
So a chaotic-looking, but maybe effective tactic, at least in keeping people engaged.
That seems to be his interpretation. Yeah, high-pressure stuff.
Okay, so finally, the conversation loops back to where we started almost. Spending cuts. O'Leary has a specific hope here.
Right. He hopes the president sends Congress a recension package, which, just for clarity...
That's a proposal to cancel spending Congress, already approved, right?
Yeah.
A way to cut the budget directly.
Exactly. So O'Leary hopes that happens, and then he hopes Congress actually follows through on the cuts.
And finds their spines and cut even more.
That phrase again, find their spines, really highlights his view that Congress struggles with the political will for cuts. Connects back to that addicted to spending idea.
And his final argument ties it all together. The government is too big, too cumbersome, and too expensive.
And that squashes the middle class, a very direct link between government size and its impact on ordinary people.
Which, like you said, echoes the other commentator's point about drowning in debt.
Yeah.
So both voices in this clip end up sounding the alarm about spending.
Yeah, a clear convergence there. Unsustainable and harmful, especially for the average person. That's the shared message.
So stepping back from this deep dive, just looking at this one conversation, this single clip, we've heard some really strong opinions.
Definitely. About Washington's challenges, the whole debate around spending and ideology, O'Leary's specific economic take, that intense trade strategy.
It really shows how these public figures frame complex stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Often using, strong language analogies.
Yeah, ways to make their point stick with an audience.
And it kind of leaves you thinking, if you take what they said, especially that tension between lawmakers needing to spend to get votes, but also the argument that cuts are desperately needed because of debt and inefficiency, that core conflict, what does that really suggest about the challenge, maybe the fundamental challenge, of getting fiscal responsibility in our kind of system?
Yeah.
What stands out to you hearing all this laid out?